like ice. One look could kill my pain, your thrill. I wanna love you, but I better not touch. I wanna hold you, but my senses tell me to stop. I wanna kiss you, but I want it too much. I wanna taste you, but your lips are venomous poison. Your poison running through my veins. Your poison. I don't wanna break these chains.
Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today we're jumping into our first Elden Ring challenge run. This time around we're going to beat Elden Ring without touching anybody. So what does it mean to be untouched?
And no, I'm not talking about your love life.
You see, I'm talking as in no direct contact with anybody, whether that be a soldier, beast or soul. I consider any being that comes in direct physical contact with us as a failure in this run. So with that out of the way, let us put down the baseline for this run. First off, any physical touch is not permitted. If at any point in the game we are required to touch a being in order to do something, that entire questline and or area is off limits. In other words, we are not allowed to progress in that direction. Second rule of this run gets confusing, but the gist of it revolves around the fact that all damage we produce cannot derive from physical contact. All our damage will to some extent be hazardous, and we will not allow ourselves a victory if we accidentally touch something with a weapon of any kind. In other words, we can only deal damage if it comes to indirectly. And on that same wavelength, all damage we receive can neither be direct. It needs to be indirect, just like the damage we deal. But by no means does this mean we're gonna do a no-hit run. In fact, quite the contrary, as most bosses and enemies wield weaponry. And as such, if we are struck by such weaponry, we are not in direct contact with the being itself. However, if this adversary uses nothing but their own anatomy as offense, it does effectively become a no-hit run, as by receiving this damage we touch this being, therefore failing this run. Finally, in the spirit of a challenge, we will also not accept any sort of help. Whether that be through the co-op system or spirit summoning mechanic, we will under no circumstance use these to our benefit, as it contradicts the point of this run, due to the fact that we cannot place these limitations on anybody else. Now then, with these rules at the back of our head, we can finally begin to showcase this run.
Words fall out of my mouth, they drift to the ground and they don't make a sound. I'll try to simple them back to the place in my head, but I feel that I lie. The proper speak that I need to narrate the scene, to tell you these things. The proper place for my thoughts, I know that I'm not, you know that I'm not.
At this point I'm already questioning the rules of the run, as Torrent is a key part to the experience even though you ride him. But after taking a close look, you can see that we sit upon Torrent's saddle, and not Torrent himself. We also don't touch him with our other hand, as it holds a rope. However, when you sprint with Torrent, you do touch him with your boot, that you use to prompt him to speed up. So in other words, I'm gonna use Torrent, mostly because I'm in a time crunch with this video, but also because we are in fact not touching him most of the time. Anyway. Now that we've finished preparing our build, our first course of action is to begin progressing Millicent's questline, as Gowry has our first offensive spell, and we require it to make progress. We begin by making our way to Heart of Liurnia, where we can find Commander O'Neill. Now we cannot attack this boss, but we can kite him around these geysers out front. And after a bit of patience, he goes down and gives us the unalloyed golden needle. With that in our possession, we can progress the quest up until the point where Gowry teaches us Celia sorceries, after which we can purchase our first offensive spell, Night Maiden's Mist. Night Maiden's Mist is a sorcery that emits a stardust-like cloud that drains health from the enemy, and with it you can make your way to Eastern Liurnia, where you can find this Deathrite bird at nighttime. By using the nearby giant skull to our advantage, we can break the boss's AI and cast the mist mostly uninterrupted. However, if this doesn't work out, you can always use the nearby troll that casts magical pots at you. If you position yourself correctly, he can hit the bird and do damage to it. Regardless, once the bird is dead, you'll receive the Death's Poker, whose weapon art, Ghost Flame Ignition, can be used to place down Freeze Flame that gradually drains the enemy while inflicting frost damage. With this and the immense amount of souls you acquired from essentially killing 2 mid-game bosses so early, you are finally ready to take on this game.
MC, make another hit.
Project X. Ha! Hey, turn me up. Hey. Hey, turn me up. Hey, turn me up. 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 Ha! Hey. Hey. Wanna hop on the shit and I'm dropping the 6 in the back and I rock my bands. I get in my till I swear to God, minute and I put that I'm friend. Niggas up with a chop with a station. Niggas up with a chop with a me man. With a chop with a stop with a speed. Niggas stop with a chop with a feel like a B. Bell with a chop. Niggas don't skip day. With a chop with a feel like a B-lay. With a chop with a feel like a relay. Jump with a chill and I feel like a relay. Break. Niggas just putting up steak. Niggas don't crack on a bake. Baking the D's and I'm fucking the D-lay. Jump, let's play. Rah till a motherfucker barber. Shot them and they unseen barber. With a chop with a top on the car bird. Niggas don't jump and I feel like a word. Hey, when I hop on a jersey. Niggas don't dick so I gotta get sturdy. Niggas don't run but I gotta get buddy. I gotta get dizzy. I gotta get started. I hop on a chop with a now with the gang. Niggas don't think man I feel like a rain. Nigga ball with a chop with a feel like a name. With a chop with a feel like a bang. Bang my speed. Making you see. And for you me. Back in the grade and know what to do. Niggas don't think when I'm bumping the stool. But I'm on my stuff but I'm fucking the crew like fucking you. But with a chop with a dude I'm sitting out speed gang. Now that nigga speed gang. What I put a G with a chop with a fill it up in it like rename. I feel like a real my nigga. My tell a lot but I'm feeling that niggas. I feel like a bitch. But in my city and I feel like a bitch. Niggas so rich. What I would do like what? Like what? I said not what? Now what?
Ready or not, here I come. You can't hide. Gonna find you and take it slow.
Heading into Liurnia, I've got a confession to make. Earlier on, I was made aware of the first roadblock in our run. We cannot go to Roundtable Hold for the entirety of this run. This is because it requires you to touch Malenia to get there. And for that reason, my top priority right now is to find War Counselor Eg, as he is the only other blacksmith besides Hugh that can fully upgrade weapons. Once there, I leveled my Death's Poker and ventured into the academy, where I was pleasantly surprised by how much easier Red Wolf of Radahn was than I expected. Since he is a beast type enemy, it would likely mean that I would have to no-hit the fight, because any graze of a claw or jaw would mean I was touched. However, the wolf mostly fights with sorceries, so no-hitting the fight was no longer an issue. Renala, however, to my surprise, was a major problem right now, as her first stage requires you to hit her scholars in order to break her protective embryo, and since all of her attacks were indirect, we couldn't beat her first stage yet. So with this in mind, I made my way to the only other appropriate demigod. Honestly, Radahn wasn't that bad. You might remember a one-shot strategy used to kill Radahn earlier on. Since then it's been patched, but that works in our favor as the surface used for this strategy is still scalable. What this means is that you can get up there, but Radahn can't. You can easily just use Torrent to get up there and toss Mist and Freeze Flame in this direction. This isn't as one-sided as it sounds though. Radahn does have a few attacks you need to watch out for. First is the Scream that pulls you in. If caught, you will fall off the ledge, and that will guarantee his follow-up attack. Next is the Gravitational Wave he hurls toward you. This will likely one-shot you at this stage of the game, so be careful. Then in his third stage he will drop on top of you, so you'll have to get off the ledge and double back once he's landed. Finally, he has a couple of meteorites you need to be aware of. To add insult to injury, the game won't register you as in the boss arena if you die on the mountainside. This means that you'll spawn at the last race you rested at, which means you'll have to go through the entire monologue again if you're going to try again. Pro tip is to always send the elevator back up after using it. But beside all these various flaws in our strategy, Radahn dies relatively quickly. Relatively. Oh god. Whew. Thank god I don't have to do that again. Laying down!
I'm rising up from the ground, from the bottom. Can't hold me down, hold me down. I'm rising up from the ground, from the bottom. Can't hold me down, hold me down, hold me down. All my wolves begin to howl, wake me up, the time is now. Can you hear the drum hit? There's a revolution coming. Wild things that turn me on, drag my dog into the dark. Can you hear the drum hit? There's a revolution coming. There's a revolution coming. There's a revolution coming. Can you hear the drum hit? There's a revolution coming. There's a revolution coming. There's a revolution coming. Can you hear the drum hit? There's a revolution coming.
Graceless, tarnished. What is thy business with these thrones?
You know, I've always wondered what the actual difference is between Morgott and Morgott. The best way I can explain it is that Morgott is the one that actually acts like the monkey he is. The way he just zooms around is so irritable that it becomes almost as anticlimactic as One Piece. For reference, usually Night Maiden's Mist does about 1800 damage. Consistently, all the bosses until now has ate at least 500 to 600 of that when active. Morgott, however, is so fucking acrobatic that I am consistently only doing about 200 to 400 damage on him. Not to mention the vast variety of follow-ups he has at a moment's notice. The only real openings are when he rains down swords and his transition into phase 2. Even then I'm only barely able to send out my freeze flame. So to strat to beating him solely comes down to Night Maiden's Mist. And due to the fact that I'm unable to acquire more upgrade materials at this point, means that Night Maiden's Mist hurts about as much as sunscreen does in your pores. Personally, I believe my victory came down to RNG, but the strat to beating him is a lot less running away and more circulating around him to keep him in the mist. If you keep yourself busy, it might eventually seep into his eyes.
Did I hear a thunder? Did I hear you break? I can't quite remember just what guided me this way. Oh, stand unshaken. Mr. Crash of the world. The vibes, they often whisper.
Now you might be wondering how I can be so sadistic. Well, I haven't got a choice in the matter, I'm afraid. You see, it's been brought to my attention that Night Maiden's Mist does not scale. That means I can't increase my damage output no matter what I do. Therefore I have to find a new spell. And by defeating this trio of bosses, I can receive a really good spell that will not only scale, but do percentage damage as well. When it comes to the Godskins here, they're difficult. Since they are apparitions, they can't be trusted, and their health is through the roof. If anything, the worst part of this fight is the fact that it took 20 minutes to finish. Considering how high octane the Godskins are in general, that was rough. However, they don't bolt around nearly as much as Morgott. So with that motivation in mind, I just gritted my teeth and reacted as best I could to their 400 millisecond bullshit. And thus, I got the Black Flame Ritual.
Now I feel my back's against the wall. Stand unshaken amidst the crash of the world. May I stand unshaken.
I don't know what I expected, but going off principle alone, Black Flames couldn't be very effective on Fire Giant. It's obvious I have to make some exception to the run, and that will be to use the Rotten Breath incantation. Although it might deal direct damage, it's very much still in the spirit of our initial playstyle. It requires good spacing, it is a mist, and causes hazardous effects. In my opinion, this is as close as an indirect spell as we can get. But still, I will try to limit the use of the spell throughout the run. Take the Fire Giant for example. I only ever used the spell twice. Once to break the cankle, and another to reapply the Scarlet Rot. Black Flame wasn't all that terrible once the bone was broken, and even better when entering the second stage as the Fire Giant had more surface area for the ritual to take effective. With these strategies in place, it does not take long for the giant to keel over and die in its place, allowing us to finally unveil this beautiful face again. It's not long after the giant statue that we hit our next roadblock. You see, in order for us to make progress at this point, we have to touch Malenia. That is a major issue. However, you can kindle the giant's flame on your own if you get the frenzied flame ending. So with that in mind, I took a trip down a well and spared you the details. With that underway, it was officially time to rekindle Morgott's childhood memory and batter his baby brother. Mohg the Omen has always been more difficult than his demigod counterpart due to the fact that we can't build status effects on him, as well as the limited space we have. So even after all that effort, we were forced to shelve Black Flame Ritual for Night Maiden's Mist. If I was frank, this was much easier than using the ritual, but I'd be lying if I enjoyed the fight. Hell, I'll even give you an insight. Just watch. Oh, how I've been dreading this part. Y'all better thank the gods for editing, cause otherwise you'd be here for fucking hours. Oh. Well, that was unexpected. But on a real note, it usually helps to jump into the wall rather than aim for the platform you land on, because that usually prevents you from overjump. Oh, fuck. Well, at this point I'm out of options. That is almost what I want to say, but lucky for you there is still a wrong warp method that works in patch 1.4. It's incredibly specific and requires almost perfect timing on your part. This is difficult, especially as a PS5 player, but by a stroke of luck I was able to pull it off. And thus, we've made it to Farum Azula without touching anyone.
What did you expect?
No, like, why are people so annoyed with the Godskin Duo fight? Honestly, have you had this filthy fight before? Clearly not. Because unlike the Godskins of Spirit Color Cave, these heifers get poisoned, rotted, frosted, and bled for all they're worth. Not to mention how good the mist is in this fight. It essentially does twice the amount of damage since both of them are in the mist. The only real challenge was lining them up for the rotten breath, but beside that, this fight was a cakewalk.
Kiss me, kiss me, infect me with your love and fill me with your poison. Take me, take me, wanna be a victim, ready for action. You're an alien, your touch is alien. It's supernatural, extraterrestrial. On the road, I got what they waiting for. Oh, run from nothing, dog. Get your soul. Just tell them ain't laying low. You was never really rooting for me anyway. When I'm back up at the top, I wanna hear you say, you don't run from nothing, dog. Get your soul. Just tell them that the break is over.
Farewell it is then.
No!
I knew you'd come to stand before the Elden Ring, to become Elden Lord. What a sad state of affairs. I commend your spirit, but alas, none shall take the throne. Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle unto eternity. In my bones, a tarnished cannot become a lord.
Maybe if we wait, he
Not
might
even
understand.
You, a man,
He doesn't understand.
can
Moving along, we come to the fight I've been dreading the most.
Upon my name as Godfrey, the first Elden Lord.
If his apparition was any indication of what's to come, I'd be shitting my pants right about now. Thankfully, it wasn't. Although Godfrey is more vicious than his ghostly counterpart, the arena is what really changes the fight for me. With this much space, I am able to bait Godfrey into my attacks if the distance between us is long enough, but that doesn't change the issue of his second phase. Well, in that case, all I've got to do is take advantage of his first stage. So here's what we'll do. First, we'll drink our physic for the opaline bubble tier. This will make sense later. We then make our way to this exact square in the arena, and after waiting a couple of seconds, we cast our rock breath. Godfrey should be just out of range in such a way that we'll be able to let the spell rip. Doing so, however, might result in an axe to the cranium. That's why we popped our physic earlier. Regardless of the headache, we run. Run for the hills. Once we are at a great distance from Godfrey, we use Ghost Flame Ignition to frost him as he's coming in. We are able to do this about 2 or 3 times before he enters his second stage, at which point our strategy will no longer work, due to his arena-sized AoE. So this is the part where we'll have to use Night Maiden's Mist. Luckily, we procced him with Scarlet Rot earlier, so the drain is much faster than it otherwise would be. Once everything falls into place, he'll be... Yes, he'll be screaming alright. This will be by far the hardest phase. Not only does he cure himself of Scarlet Rot through the transition, but he also doesn't give you much space. Therefore we begin by running away. This time around, Godfrey won't be as casual as he used to be. So the freeze flame is out of the question, as our weapon would hit him if we turn around at this point. Therefore we use Black Flame Ritual and bait Godfrey into it. There are not a lot of openings, but one surefire way to guarantee a lot of damage is to cast it right as you see him scream. Chances are he'll leap at you and perform his Earthshaker. If done right, he'll land face first into the flames and tank all the damage it's about to do. You should also have just about enough time to dodge out of the way. However, you need to be incredibly careful of his attacks, as he attacks with his bare hands in this fight. So even a single grace of his attack in this phase would mean it ruins my run. But if you play by the rules, the fight will be more or less hook, line and sinker from there.
Tarnished. Thy strength befits same crown.
Okay, so I might have forgot to record that final fight with the Elden Beast. But let's be honest here. Does anyone really expect the Elden Beast to withstand my Black Flame ritual? The answer is no. It didn't, and the fight was really easy. Anyhow, with the final boss out of my hair, I can finally finish the game. What we need to figure out at this point is which ending we are allowed to have. We've already clarified that the Frenzied Flame ending is off limits, as it requires us to be touched by the 3 fingers. The normal endings are also not available to us, since it requires us to pick up Marika's head, which would violate the rules of our run. So our final option is the Age of Stars ending, as in this ending we are nearly touched by Ranni, but not quite at the same time. All we've got to do now is make our way to Nokron, kill Elder Centipede, and